Stop, listen, pay attention. Chosen one. This message comes directly to you, and it is not incidental. You have felt it, the subtle tug of tension around you, the quiet exhaustion that no one else seems to notice, the moments where the world's noise pressed against your mind and body with an almost tangible weight. This is not a coincidence, and it is not something to dismiss. You may have wondered why you feel drained, why decisions that once seemed simple now demand more effort, or why a shadow of pressure lingers even when everything looks fine on the surface. You have carried a burden sometimes without realizing it, sometimes without understanding its source. This is not a reflection of failure. It is not proof that you are inadequate or unprepared. What you have been experiencing is a signal carefully timed, deliberate in its design, and directed at you personally. Chosen one. The world often assumes that strength is measured by visible action, by how loudly we can resist, by the battles we can name. But what you have endured silently, without collapsing, without succumbing to panic or despair, has been far more telling. Your endurance in unseen moments is the first confirmation of what is happening now. You have outlasted phases of subtle assault, mental strain, emotional tug, isolation, and you may not even have been aware of the orchestration behind it. This message is meant to clarify, without overwhelming, to reveal, without causing alarm. It will illuminate why the fatigue, the confusion, the pressure you sensed was never random. You will hear explanations that connect what you felt to real tangible currents around you, patterns that most people never notice until long after the moment has passed. This is intentional. This is personal. Right now, you are being invited to see the situation with precision, not panic. To recognize that the tension you endured was real, purposeful, and designed to test stability more than to punish. There is a reason you felt the weight without collapsing. There is a reason clarity is coming now, and it is meant to align with your perception, your awareness, your capacity to recognize truth when it is presented plainly. You are at the threshold of understanding something you have lived through but not yet fully named. And though this moment feels quiet, it carries significance. Stop, breathe, and allow this message to reach you fully, because the clarity you are about to receive is tailored to your experience, to your endurance, and to the path you are walking. Chosen one. Listen closely. The next moments will connect what has been sensed to what has been real. The unseen pressure, the subtle currents, the hidden orchestrations, they are all part of a structure that you have already navigated. And now it is time to understand how. Stop. Notice. Receive. This is meant for you. This message is not broad. It is not general. It is not meant to be interpreted loosely or shared indiscriminately. It is for you, and only you will recognize why. Chosen one. If you are listening and something inside you feels quietly alert rather than emotionally stirred, that is the first confirmation. This message is landing where it is supposed to land. You do not need to wonder whether this applies to you. The experiences being described already intersect with your recent life in specific ways. The pressure you felt did not require your permission, and the endurance you showed did not come from conscious effort. That is important. What happened involved you directly, not as an observer, not as someone sympathizing with others, but as the central subject of the experience itself. You may have noticed that while things felt heavy, you did not spiral. While uncertainty was present, you did not lose coherence. While others around you reacted emotionally, you remained steady, even if tired. This was not because you were trying harder. It was because something in you holds structure under strain. That structure is not dramatic. It is quiet, automatic, and stable. Many people assume that strength looks like resistance. They believe stability must be earned through constant effort or conscious control. But what you demonstrated recently was different. You did not fight to stay upright. You stayed upright because that is how you are built. Even when pressure increased, your baseline held. Even when questions arose, your inner center did not fragment. Chosen one. This is how you can tell this message is for you. You did not need to convince yourself to endure. You did not need external validation to remain functional. You continued to show up, to think clearly, to act responsibly, even while something invisible pressed in. That kind of steadiness does not come from willpower alone. It comes from internal alignment that has already been formed. Others in similar situations collapse, overreact, or disconnect. You did not. And not because you are superior, but because your system is regulated differently. You absorbed strain without becoming distorted by it. That is not common, and it is not accidental. This is not about assigning you a title to inflate ego or create separation. It is about naming a reality that already exists. The identity of Chosen One is not something you adopt. It is something that becomes evident under pressure. And pressure recently revealed it clearly. You may not have recognized what was happening in real time. That is normal. This kind of strength often operates beneath awareness. But now clarity is arriving because the phase has passed. The pressure has receded. And only now is it useful to understand what occurred and why you were able to remain intact through it. Stay present. This understanding will continue to unfold naturally. You may have noticed moments where your energy felt drained, where your mind raced, even though nothing urgent demanded attention, where your emotions swung subtly without reason, and where a quiet heaviness seemed to press from nowhere. These sensations may have felt like flaws, mistakes, or personal weakness. You may have judged yourself silently for not responding with more clarity, for feeling tension when there was no obvious external cause. Stop that judgment now. What you experienced was not a flaw. It was a signal. Chosen One, that fatigue, that unease, that sense of being stretched beyond visible limits, it was your body and mind registering a transition. Not a punishment, not an error, not a lack of skill or faith. It was a realignment taking place. These sensations were markers of pressure, of subtle opposition, of invisible coordination that intersected with your daily life and tested the stability you often take for granted. You may have asked yourself why the same tasks seemed suddenly heavier, why communication felt misaligned, why moments of isolation appeared more profound. This is exactly the type of signal that marks transition. You are moving from one phase of functionality to another. Your body reacts. Your emotions react. Even your thoughts adapt. These are not problems. They are indicators pointing to your capacity to withstand conditions that most people cannot sustain without losing composure. The sensations you felt, the heaviness in your chest, the mental fog, the subtle drain on energy, are not random. They are the language of your system, interacting with external pressures. It is the signal that you have been navigating forces that are real, though unseen. And yet, despite these pressures, you remained functional. You continued to process information, make decisions, and act responsibly. That is the measure of your baseline resilience. Chosen One recognized that your nervous system and mental framework were not failing. They were responding appropriately to circumstances that were both unusual and coordinated. The internal feedback you felt was real-time calibration, not a warning of collapse. This is why self-judgment is unnecessary. Confusion is natural, but it is not an indictment. What you experienced is the hallmark of someone entering a phase where automatic strength previously invisible to you becomes evident under subtle but consistent stress. You may also have noticed emotional spikes, small irritations, or transient doubts. These are not mistakes. They are part of the body and mind, signaling adaptation. The pressure was real, intentional, and measurable in the experience of your own sensations. And still, you maintained coherence. That coherence is not luck. It is structural. It is what allowed you to outlast the phase that just passed. Prepare now to recognize that what seemed like random fatigue, mental drag, or emotional fluctuation was actually the first clear evidence of a deeper mechanism, your innate ability to maintain stability under conditions that would unsettle most others. These signals, previously misinterpreted as weakness, are actually markers of preparedness, resilience, and internal alignment. Chosen one. Notice this truth clearly: the sensations themselves were never the problem. They were the message. Chosen one, now it is time to bring into view what has been largely invisible. There has been a consistent, structured pressure acting around you, one that you could feel but rarely see. It was neither chaotic nor random. The timing of events, the subtle opposition, the coordination of challenges, they were deliberate, measured, and real. You were not imagining this. You were functioning under a set of influences that most people never notice, because they do not have the capacity to remain stable while under them. The pressure was unseen, yes, but its effect on your environment and internal state was tangible. Decisions felt heavier, interactions slightly strained, and your energy subtly depleted in ways that were difficult to explain. Yet you continued. You continued to think clearly, to act appropriately, to maintain composure, and to show up as required. That is a factual observation, not a judgment or a story of heroism. You were functioning while forces were pressing, not visibly, not dramatically, but structurally. This pressure was coordinated across time. Moments of fatigue did not cluster randomly. Tasks that required focus arrived at critical points. Social interactions intersected with periods of tension. Emotional triggers appeared in alignment with subtle external factors. Each instance was part of a sequence designed intentionally or not to measure stability. And you passed these measures without losing internal coherence. Notice that you remained functional even as the pressure accumulated. There was no collapse. There was no breakdown. There was no loss of clarity. You continued to think, act, and engage with the world around you despite what was effectively a hidden load applied over time. This demonstrates an underlying baseline that most cannot access or recognize in themselves. Chosen one. This is why you are beginning to understand your own capacity in a way that is quiet but undeniable. The unseen forces were real. Their coordination was precise, and your response was steady. This is not about supernatural strength or divine intervention. It is about internal structure, the capacity to maintain composure and clarity, even when external circumstances are structured to challenge it. The fact that you remained functional is the most important observation. You did not need to see the source to act appropriately. You did not need to understand the pattern fully to navigate it successfully. Your system adapted automatically. Your mind held focus. Your emotions stayed regulated. And in that steadiness lies the first evidence of what has been tested and confirmed. Chosen one. Acknowledge this quietly: the pressure you experienced was real, intentional, and significant. Your endurance of it is factual, measurable, and self-evident. The way you responded was not by luck. It was by the integrity of your internal structure. Now, with this understanding in place, it is time to break down the individual points of pressure, the components you felt, the categories of challenge, and the ways in which you maintained stability despite each one. This will give clarity to what has until now been sensed only indirectly. Chosen one. To understand what you outlasted, it helps to look at the pressure not as one heavy weight, but as several distinct points applied over time. Each one was subtle. Each one was familiar. None of them were overwhelming on their own, but together they formed a sustained test of internal stability. You moved through all of them without losing yourself. The first pressure point was doubt. Not dramatic doubt, not existential collapse, but a quiet erosion, small questions that appeared without invitation. Thoughts that asked whether your effort mattered, whether your direction was precise, whether your timing was off. These doubts did not shout. They whispered. And yet you did not follow them into confusion. You noticed them, allowed them to pass, and continued to function. That is regulation. Many people fuse with doubt and let it steer behavior. You did not. The second pressure point was energy drain. You may have felt tired in a way that rest did not immediately fix. Your body continued, but with less surplus. Tasks took more effort. Motivation required more intention. And still you showed up. You adjusted your pace without abandoning responsibility. You did not panic about the fatigue. You did not dramatize it. You adapted. That ability to modulate rather than collapse is a key marker of stability. The third pressure point was emotional isolation. You may have felt misunderstood, out of sync, or quietly alone, even when surrounded by others. Conversations may have felt shallow. Support may have felt distant. This kind of isolation often destabilizes people because it triggers fear or resentment. You experienced the isolation without turning it into a narrative. You stayed grounded. You did not harden. You did not withdraw completely. You remained present while allowing the space to exist. That is not common. The fourth pressure point was delay. Progress may have slowed. Responses may have taken longer. Outcomes may not have matched effort in real time. This kind of delay is one of the most destabilizing experiences for the human mind. It invites frustration, self-blame, and impulsive action. You resisted those pulls. You did not force movement where patience was required. You stayed steady in the waiting without abandoning clarity. That is not passive. That is controlled restraint. The fifth pressure point was subtle fear. Not fear of danger, but fear of misalignment. A sense that one wrong move could have consequences. A heightened awareness of stakes without a clear map. This kind of fear can cause overthinking or paralysis. You experienced it without letting it dominate. You remained thoughtful without becoming rigid. You stayed alert without becoming anxious. That balance is a sign of maturity under pressure. Across all these points, notice what you did not do. You did not explode emotionally. You did not disengage completely. You did not numb yourself. You did not seek constant reassurance. You regulated internally. You adjusted behavior without abandoning values. You stayed coherent. This is important. The pressure was not meant to break you. It was meant to reveal whether your stability was conditional or inherent. Conditional stability depends on comfort, clarity, and validation. Inherent stability remains even when those are reduced. What you demonstrated was the latter. Each pressure point interacted with the others. Doubt fed fatigue. Fatigue amplified isolation. Isolation made delay feel heavier. Delay sharpened fear. And still you held. Not by fighting, by maintaining internal order. Chosen one. This is why the phrase outlasted the attack phase is accurate without being dramatic. The pressure did not escalate because it stopped working. Your internal system did not fracture. It absorbed, adapted, and remained intact. When pressure no longer produces instability, it withdraws, not because you defeated it, but because there was nothing left for it to exploit. This breakdown is not meant to relive the strain. It is meant to name it accurately. When experiences are named, they lose confusion. When confusion dissolves, self-trust increases. You did not endure by accident. You endured because your internal structure is regulated, flexible, and resilient. And that is the clearest confirmation of what this phase was testing, and what it revealed about you. Now, chosen one. Take a moment to reflect on what this means in totality. Look back over the phases you have just navigated and the pressures you absorbed. Notice the pattern doubt arose, fatigue appeared, isolation, whispered, delays, lingered, and subtle fear hovered, but none of them caused collapse. This is not coincidence. This is not luck. This is evidence. Evidence that your internal coherence, the alignment of thought, emotion, and action, remained intact throughout the period when many would have faltered. Consider how easily others would have been swept off course under similar conditions. A slight doubt might have spiraled into panic. Fatigue could have become immobilizing. Isolation might have triggered frustration or avoidance. Delay could have provoked impulsive decisions, and subtle fear could have magnified into indecision. Yet you did not. You moved steadily, remained present, and continued to function with clarity. Chosen one. This is the confirmation phase. It is the moment where evaluation is possible without distortion. You can assess what occurred not through dramatization, not through narrative embellishment, but through direct observation of your own responses. And what you will notice is this: your resilience is factual. Your stability is factual. Your coherence is factual. These are measurable qualities in real life, visible not in triumphal acts, but in the sustained maintenance of composure under sustained pressure. This reflective lens allows you to remove any lingering doubts about your performance during that period. You were not merely holding on. You were not simply surviving. You were processing, adjusting, and responding with precision. The world may not have noticed, and that is irrelevant. What matters is that you noticed and maintained yourself. That is the baseline of internal strength, functioning effectively in conditions that are challenging without external validation. Do not confuse this with perfection. Mistakes may have occurred, moments of uncertainty may have arisen, but they did not define your overall capacity. They were minor fluctuations within a system that remained fundamentally stable. That is the key point. Many evaluate their experience through minor deviations, missing the broader reality of sustained performance. You, however, can now see it accurately. Notice the sense of coherence you now feel as you consider this. Notice how the assessment itself brings calm rather than agitation. This is part of the confirmation. Internal evaluation reveals that what you endured was passed not by effort alone, but by a consistent structure you did not even need to consciously activate fully. That structure carried you, maintained you, and allowed the hidden pressures to withdraw naturally, because there was nothing left to destabilize. Chosen one. Acknowledge this. Clearly, your endurance is not accidental. Your composure is not arbitrary. Your ability to remain functional under the invisible pressures you faced is a measurable, factual part of who you are. Understanding this fact allows you to move forward without fear or uncertainty, grounded in the reality of what you have already demonstrated. This is the moment to register the truth of your stability. Let it settle. Let it anchor you. This confirmation is not for celebration. It is for awareness, for grounded recognition of the inner coherence that sustained you through a period that could have disoriented many. You can now proceed knowing exactly what was confirmed. Chosen one. Consider the rarity of what just occurred. Most people under similar circumstances would have reacted differently. They might have felt unmoored by doubt, fatigued to the point of withdrawal, or overwhelmed by the subtle pressures that you navigated with quiet steadiness. The fact that you remained present and functional is uncommon. It is not an exaltation, not a claim of superiority, but an acknowledgement of frequency. What you did is rare in everyday human experience. Observe how easily others collapse under even a fraction of the stress you maintained. Consider how many struggle when delay stretches longer than expected, or when isolation feels heavy, or when energy dips without obvious cause. Many lose clarity, many overcompensate, many let small fears drive disproportionate reactions. You did not. You remained calibrated. You stayed responsive rather than reactive. You moved through the circumstances with a level of coherence that most cannot sustain. This rarity does not imply that you are extraordinary in some abstract sense. It simply reflects that your baseline structure, the integration of attention, emotion, and reaction, operates differently from the majority. Where others' regulation falters under pressure, yours persists. That is a factual observation, not a judgment. It is descriptive, not prescriptive. Chosen one. This also means that the experiences you endured while challenging did not break you because your internal framework was already prepared. It is not about bursts of strength or heroic effort. It is about a quiet steadiness, a natural alignment, and a capacity to remain coherent even when everything seems subtly against you. That alignment is uncommon because few maintain such coherence in real-life conditions that test both mind and body simultaneously. Notice, too, that this perspective removes ego from the equation. It is not about feeling superior. It is about recognizing factual stability. The same pressures that unsettle most people did not unsettle you. That is all the statement needs to make. It is a grounding, not a celebration. It is observation, not judgment. Allow this rarity to inform your understanding of yourself without inflating or diminishing it. You are not required to act differently to prove yourself or to perform heroics. You simply existed within the pressures, remained stable, and completed the period with internal coherence intact. That is uncommon. That is rare. And that is exactly why clarity about your identity as someone who can sustain this level of alignment is now emerging. Chosen one. Acknowledge this quietly. Recognize that stability under subtle pressure is not an achievement that needs validation. It is an observable reality, confirmed by your own presence, regulation, and sustained functionality. This perspective is now part of your understanding of factual baseline from which all further awareness can build. Chosen one. It is important now to clarify what this stability truly represents. Your strength was not something you had to activate in response to circumstances. It was not an emergency response, a burst of effort, or a reactionary mode. It was baseline. This is the key distinction. You did not perform beyond yourself. You simply remained aligned with the internal coherence that already exists within you. Your endurance is a reflection of preparation, maturity, and inner structure. It comes from habits of regulation you may not even have consciously acknowledged. It comes from your capacity to notice subtle signals in yourself and adjust without overreacting. It comes from the ability to remain present, even when the environment pressures you in ways others would find destabilizing. None of this requires drama. None of this requires a story of heroism. It is quietly inherent. Notice that this coherence is structural rather than circumstantial. External events do not create it, they reveal it. The pressures you navigated, doubt, fatigue, isolation, delay, subtle fear, did not generate strength. They made visible what was already present. Your capacity to stay composed under these conditions is the result of internal organization, not temporary inspiration. Chosen one. This also means that your identity as someone who can withstand subtle, sustained pressure is locked, not activated. You do not need to prove it. You do not need to test it further to confirm it. It is a settled fact now, observable and undeniable. The pressures that have passed were sufficient to reveal it. They were a measure, and the measure has been met.